empty nest, too personal best. Let's fly, Mom, fly.
Welcome to another episode of Fly Mum Fly. Today I have the pleasure of welcoming an Aussie woman named Annie Bourke. Annie's journey as an animal parent and her ability to communicate with animals, both living and in spirit, have transformed the lives of countless pet owners. As an animal communicator and medium, Annie has provided comfort and answers to questions that grieving animal parents long to hear. Stay tuned until the end as Annie will unveil an important announcement that will revolutionize the way you communicate with your beloved pets. Annie, I'm so glad to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Bobby. I'm looking forward to sharing some of the wisdom that animals have shared with me.
Oh, I can't wait. I just got excited when I was, going back and looking at my week ahead. And I thought, oh, okay, Wednesday is Annie Day because Monday and Tuesday were Tuesday definitely was a public holiday here with being 4th of July. And Monday I didn't do anything because a lot of businesses shut down to have a really long weekend. So this is my first podcast recording for the week, and I'm so glad it's you. Most of us have pets, and unfortunately, most of us have had to deal with the grief and loss that comes when a pet crosses over. Can I go back to the beginning of your story, and if you can possibly shed some light on how all this began for you?
Certainly. So I will just let your listeners know that animal communication is something that we all do when we're children. So it's telepathic communication, and it's not something that we say out loud. And telepathic communication is how animals talk to each other, both within their own species and in between species. So if you've got a cat and a dog, they can actually talk to each other telepathically, but we can't hear it. But if you look at dogs walking down the street, they'll go up to each other and rub noses. They're actually having a conversation, but we're just not aware that they're doing it. So as children, we can automatically talk to animals. And if you look at little kids, they squat right down next to the animal and they'll tell you what they're saying. And most parents think, oh, yes, dear, very nice, but not understand it's actually a genuine conversation. And then something happens as we grow up and we turn that ability off. But it's something that we can reactivate again. And for as long as I can remember, I'd always thought my animals could understand me. And I used to actually say to my cats, I wish I could speak cat, not knowing that I could. And then one of my little girl cats passed away suddenly after a short illness. And it just made me feel as though I'd missed an opportunity to get to know her on a deeper level because I didn't know how to communicate with her. So she's the one who inspired me to look for an animal communication course. And I found one. And the image on the front of the website looked exactly like her. And she had very unique facial markings. So I thought, well, there's a big sign from the universe that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I've actually spoken to her in spirit since because I did feel as though I had missed that opportunity and regretted not learning communication further. She's got no regrets about that. She said that was her mission to guide me to doing animal communication because she knew that was my purpose and that was her role. And our animals have got soul missions and soul lessons to learn just like we do. They're a soul that's come to earth in an animal body. We're souls that have come to earth in a human body, but we all have missions and lessons, and that was hers. So I'm very grateful that she's drawn me down this path because she knew this is the work that I'm supposed to be doing. So when I started, I had 2 cats with me and they became my very patient teachers. And then I just expanded out and practiced with friends' animals so that they could confirm some of the information that I was getting. Because that's the hardest thing when you're starting, is doubting yourself and doubting what you're hearing. And you're thinking, did I just make that up? Am I hearing things? And then I've expanded out from that now. I love going to zoos and talking with the animals at zoos because, often they haven't had a human talking with them. Communication is a free will choice for animals. So I have to ask consent to have a conversation. And I've only had 2 animals at zoos who didn't want to talk to me. And every other animal I've spoken with has wanted to talk. And if they don't want to talk, that's their choice and I respect that. they all talk in different voices. So when you hear them, they're actually in your head. You don't hear it audibly in your ear. So it's really bizarre the first time you hear the voices, because it's just as though it's echoing inside your head. But you hear different voices, and then you know it's not your inner dialogue voice.
Right.
And so I hear masculine voices for the males. I hear them laughing when they're telling me funny stories. I had to speak with a horse who'd run into an electric fence, and he'd actually burnt himself on his chest. So he was actually in pain. And he said to me, "Oh, yes, that was shocking." Now, he totally understood the pun. He deliberately chose that word. And I thought, good on him. Like, he's in pain, but his sense of humour is still okay. So you just never know what they're going to tell you, what they're going to say. I had a horse sing some of her answers to me, and I'd never had an animal sing to me before. And her mum wanted to know if she'd like to try a bridle that meant that she had no metal in her mouth. And she started singing Alleluia. And I thought, well, credit to her, because that was appropriate song to sing, and she could sing it really well. So that was just a real surprise. So every conversation I have, I just consider as a learning opportunity. They're sharing their wisdom with me, and I've been doing this for over 12 years now, and I still am learning new concepts, which is what I'm been writing about in my books.
This is absolutely fascinating. I would like to start with when you went to do your course on how to connect and learn to understand how they are communicating with you. What were some of the initial steps involved, or if there are, in a nutshell, steps that one takes, what would they be?
I'm actually offering an animal communication mentorship program now. So with what I've developed and learnt along the way, I share now with animal parents, and I work with them one-on-one and their animals, who I prepare for each session beforehand so they know what we're doing. So they go through my process of connection and grounding. I'm very interested in spirituality, so it is a spiritual, for me, process, connecting with our animals. So I ground to Mother Earth, I ground with the spiritual realm. We call in animal spirit guides to help with the process. And for me, I call it a language of love, because you're connecting with the energy of that animal, you're connecting with their heart, and then asking consent to have the conversation, and then waiting for the answers to come through. And their answers come very quickly. And it's sort of like a shock when you ask the question. And some of the animals already seem to know what I'm going to ask, and they start talking to me before I've even got the question out. They're just so intuitive and so intelligent. But it is easy to block yourself and doubt. I was speaking with a cat in spirit who was blind, and his mum had lots of questions for him, which he was happy to answer. And then partway through the conversation, he said to me, "Rumple teaser." And I listened to that word and thought, what's he trying to say? I hadn't heard it before. And I thought, is he trying to say Rumpelstiltskin? But that didn't make any sense with what we were talking about. And I thought, I must just be hearing things. So I ignored it, and we kept on talking. And then he said it again very clearly. And I thought, okay, he's giving me a message here. I'm just going to have to send it to his mum. And I've never met Mum. I've obviously never met the cat. I connect with animals through photographs. So I've just got a photo of this cat. So I typed a message to his mum and said, was he ever called Rumpelteaser? Something made me think that it was a name. And there was no answer for a while, and I thought, oh, she's going to think I'm absolutely crazy. And then I got this message, oh, yes, I'd forgotten all about that. And
No.
when she rescued him, he lived with a dog called Rumpel, and he used to get in trouble for teasing the dog, so he got called Rumpelteaser.
Oh, that's incredible.
And I get this stuff all the time. A lot of animals in spirit will give me what I now call a code word, like the Rumpelteaser factor, a word which makes no sense to me, but lets the parents know without doubt that I've definitely connected with their animal in spirit, and I'm not just making it all up. And I thought, how clever of him to send me that word. And, it was so easy to doubt it because I hadn't heard the word before, and it made no sense. I've had another dog I spoke with, and his code word was treehouse. And the same thing, I'm thinking, how can a treehouse be a code word for a dog? Like, I couldn't imagine a dog climbing up little steps going into a treehouse. But his mum said afterwards it was the name of a property that he went to a lot with her. And over the road is a series of nature walks that he was on from when he was a puppy till just before he passed away. So that was really appropriate for him to use that as a word confirming that I was connecting with him. And it was such a special place for both of them to be together. So I'm just used to it now that if I get a word that they won't explain, that's their word for telling their humans, and they have
I,
to interpret it.
I just love this. Are you able to share one or two stories of the types of people that are mostly coming to you? Are people wanting to know if their pet is healthy? Do they want to know, maybe, because I've heard of pets coming through perhaps with a connection to a pet that's already passed,
Yep.
and or is a dog or a cat or any type of pet, I can imagine, are people wanting you to provide comfort and solace during that time when it looks like their beloved family member's life may be coming to an end?
Yep. All of the above.
Right.
So with animal parents of living animals, lots of questions about behaviour changes. So when we can't talk telepathically with our animals, they're so smart, they know that they have to use different vocalizations or eye language or body language, or when they get desperate, behaviour changes to try and get their messages through to us. And behaviour changes are a very effective way to get our attention, because we certainly notice when they do something out of the ordinary. So again, they're just so intelligent to do that. Every animal I've spoken with that has changed behaviour, there's been a reason behind it. They're not doing it just to be naughty. So they're trying to get a specific message through. So lots of questions about behaviour, also questions about health. Often animals hide health issues. They don't want us worrying about it, and they hide pain. They don't want
Oh
us worrying about the
no.
fact that they're in pain. One of my spiritual gifts is clairsentience, which means that I can feel things. So I can now ask an animal to let me feel in my body what they're feeling in their body. So then I can feel their physical pain, and they also let me feel their emotional pain, because our animals can sometimes still be grieving for another animal member who's passed over, or a human family member who's passed over. Some of our rescue animals are still dealing with their trauma from before they came to their forever family. And so they may still be dealing with emotional and psychological issues that the humans know nothing about. And so they can share some of that information. And fortunately, there are healing modalities to help relieve some of that emotional baggage that they're still carrying, so that they can lead a more fulfilled life. I also get asked questions like, do they want to go on the family holiday, or do they want to stay at home with a pet sitter, or do they
Right.
want to go into kennels somewhere? Do they want to be a parent? Like, do they want to breed? And I
Yeah.
spoke with a lovely female dog, and not only did she want to be a mum, she'd also been checking out the male talent at the dog show she'd gone to, and worked out who she wanted to be the father of her babies. Thank you very much. So
I'll have number
again,
10, thanks.
so she knew who it was, and when I told her mum, she knew who it was as well. So it's just amazing what they pick up, what they know. Um, a lot of questions I get asked about whose soul is in the animals,
Mm.
and this is something that I knew nothing about until one of my little cats passed away suddenly, and she wasn't very old and she wasn't ill at all. And she was one of my first animal communicators teachers, so I didn't know how long I'd have to wait to talk to her on the other side, but at least I was in the unique position that I could talk to her on the other side when she was ready to talk. Fortunately, she was able to speak to me that same day that she passed, and so I said, "What did you do that for?" And she said, "Oh, I needed a new body," in a tone like that, and I'm thinking, "What?" And she said, "Stop being so sentimental. I'm coming back." And she'd been so accurate with everything she'd been teaching me. I just had to believe her. And a lot of my friends thought I was crazy, and perhaps it was a weird grief coping technique, imagining that your animal could come back. But she told me what she was going to look like. And so I contacted my breeder and I said, "This is going to sound really weird, but you're going to have a kitten born looking like this, and it's very important that she comes back to me." And she came back.
Oh my
And
goodness.
within 2 days, it was as though she'd never left. She looks different.
Yes.
So it's as though she's gone away and had a full body makeover, but then she just comes home, and her brothers weren't pining for her. They knew what was going on. And as soon as she got back, she's lying all over them, using them as pillows, trying to eat their food. It changes the dynamics of the family because it may be the older one that's passed away and they now come back into the family as the younger one. So they've got to change their
Yeah.
dynamics and interactions around. But one of them came back and he just totally ignored all the hissing and growling and everything and just kind of said, I'm the boss, just deal with it. And in 2 days, they stopped all the growling and hissing and everybody gets on. And this has happened so many times now with client families that when I speak with an animal in spirit, if they know that it's their destiny to come back and they've found a body to reincarnate in, then they can tell me what breed, what gender, what colour. Sometimes they can tell me where for their parents to look, and sometimes they know a time frame for when they're going to be back. Sometimes they do have to change gender to come back, and sometimes they're not exactly thrilled about coming back. And there is a lovely movie, A Dog's Purpose, and I don't know if
I
it's...
wrote this down before because I wanted to ask you about this.
Yep.
Okay, so are dogs ever relaying to you what their specific purpose is?
They can, and it's a question that we actually ask now in the mentorship program, that the humans ask their animals why they're with them. And so it may be a previous animal soul that's come back to us. So I've spoken to people and we've worked out it's actually their childhood pet who's now reincarnated to have another lifetime with them. It may be an animal that's been with us in a past lifetime. And I know a lot of people aren't aware about past lives, but again, this is what the animals have been teaching me. So it's totally changed my understanding of reality. But I spoke with a cat and they said they'd had a lifetime with their parent in Houston, Texas in 1919. Now, I didn't even know if Houston was established in 1919, but I looked it up and yes, it was. And so they can give me this detail and they can remember their past lives. We don't, unless we have a past life regression and we can see something. But they know what's happened in the past and they're very aware of why they're with us. So some of them have specifically come to us to help us with our life mission and help us master our soul lessons. And some of them have come to us so that we can help them with their soul lessons. But there's definitely a reason why they're with us. So sometimes it's a human soul who's in our animal. So I've got a number of clients that have got their grandparents in their animals or their parents.
It's funny because I'm jotting down all these questions. And again,
Yep,
oh my God, guys, listeners, sorry, guys, ladies, gents,
ladies,
whatever you want to be.
animal parents.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know what's going on here, but you keep answering my questions before I ask them. So you are so
Well,
in tune, my friend.
it's just so fascinating because, again, I didn't know any of this. So it's just been such a huge learning curve for me over the last 12 years. And you're getting a crash course in half an hour of
I know, but it's
some
funny
of the
because
cool things they've taught me.
yeah, what I'm thinking, you're actually answering. And there were two questions here. The first one, which I will ask you, I was really intrigued because to me, a soul is energy. So can we do human and then do animal and then do human
Yes.
again? And the second question, which answer how in whatever way you want to, can you speak to plants as well? So let's go to the humans
The
coming back,
souls.
the
Yes.
soul, sorry, coming back as animals, and yeah, and vice
Yep.
versa. Tell me about your
So
experiences with
my
that.
my understanding with that is that we as a soul can choose whether we come back as a human or an animal. So we're a soul coming to earth for an experience with lessons to learn. Now, one of my male original cat animal communicator showed me that we'd had a lifetime together in ancient Egypt, like a couple of thousand years ago. He was a cat, I was a priestess.
Mm-hmm.
And he's had human lifetimes with me since, and he's had animal lifetimes with me. So he's shown me through that we can have lifetimes as each. I've had a few past life regressions done where I've gone back to see past lives because I'm just so interested in what I've done with animals. I know it's not just this lifetime.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any lifetimes as an animal, but that doesn't mean to say that I haven't had them. And I have spoken to people who can recall being an animal in a past life. But we're a soul, we're energy, and that's what you're connecting with the
Yeah.
communication. But they've also taught me that the soul endures. So once the physical body passes away, that soul exists forever. So I've had a conversation with a dog who passed over more than 20 years ago. They're still contactable. But what they've also taught me is that when they come back, it's a higher evolved aspect of the soul who comes back. So my girl who passed over, who taught me about reincarnation, I still connect with her in spirit. An aspect of her soul has come back in a female body, and I talk to her telepathically as well. Different female voice, but two aspects of the same soul.
Would you
So
say
that's really
the aspects would be, for instance, like what we would call our human conscious selves and our higher self?
no, it's more like when we're on Earth, we're here
Mhm.
to evolve on a
Mhm.
soul level. And so once we've finished a lifetime, theoretically, we've mastered our soul purpose and the soul lessons. So we've ascended as a
Yeah.
soul into a higher form of evolution. And so the aspect that comes back is a higher evolved aspect of that soul and will
Mhm.
come back with a different mission and different lessons to learn.
Mhm. That's just amazing. And if we move on to trees, plants,
I know a
obviously
lot of
they're
people who
energetic.
talk to them
Yeah.
because they're energy. Yep.
Yes.
And that's what the conversation is, that you're connecting with that energetic frequency. I've said to people it's sort of like tuning into an old fashioned radio,
Yes.
getting onto the frequency of the animal. So I know people that talk to plants. So similar kind of thing.
I have
Uh,
found as I've gotten older, when I turned 50, especially after my last child left home, I just started talking to any animal, insect that I come across. For instance, there was a bird outside this morning and I was turning on the hose and I was just looking at it and said, "Oh, hello." And just sort of, I guess, greeting it. I also find nowadays and this sounds dreadful, but when I see roadkill, I let them know how sorry I am and I hope they're in a good place. I mean, is that weird, or does the energy of my thought interact with another energy somewhere?
no, with animals, when you're talking to them out in the yard, animals love us talking to them. They love us knowing that they understand everything that we say, and they do. I've had a lot of people saying, "Oh, yeah, it's a dog and it knows no and walk," but they have extensive vocabularies. But what really empowers them is knowing that we know that they're understanding what we're saying. So if your listeners do nothing else after listening to this episode, apart from telling their animal that they love them and they're grateful that they're with them, that will change the dynamics of the relationship. So I don't even have to have a conversation with the animal to change the relationship. When the human parent tells them that they love them, they know, but to hear us saying those high frequency words
Yes.
really changes things, and you'll see they look differently at you. They might be more affectionate, but it really changes everything. But they just understand everything. And like when we do the mentorship program, we do a lot of exercises, and I prepare them for this beforehand so they know what we're going to be asking, because it's new for them to be helping their parent to
Yes.
understand their world. And I had to ask, one of the mums asked her boy cat for a word starting with the letter S. And he said supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And like we thought, what? He's been watching Mary Poppins.
Yes.
And then his sister for the T word said Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Oh,
So, and then the sister told us a word that neither of us had heard of before. And when I looked it up in the dictionary, it was there. So I'm convinced that some of these animals have had past lives as humans, and they've used language that we don't use now in everyday conversation, because some of the words they were coming out with, we just don't use. So it's absolutely fascinating, but they do have very extensive vocabularies.
that's
But hearing us saying that we love them and we're
mhm.
grateful, they're really high frequency words. The same with when we give them a name. We do have to be sensitive to the frequency of the word that we're using. So if we call them something derogatory like fatso, that can affect them over time. I spoke with a cat who was called Phantom Menace from Star Wars, and he hated being called Menace, and he wanted to be called Harry. And as soon as the family started calling him Harry, he responded. So We do
When
need to
I
think they are affected by the negative things that we talk about. So we just need to be careful if we're saying something negative, not necessarily about them, but anything that's negative, the frequency of those words repeatedly can affect them as well. They're just so sensitive.
when we got the first of 3 dogs that we currently have, that was 10 years ago, and we were trying to think of a name, and we had a couple. She was called Daisy, but it just didn't seem to fit. We thought maybe Penny, and then that didn't seem to fit either. And I was sitting outside with her probably the day after I picked her up from this lady who I adopted her from. She was 5 months old at the time. And I was sitting outside and I said to her, "What is your name going to be?" And I kind of said it to her, and I said it to spirit, whatever's above me. And then at that point in time, the name Lizzie came to mind. And Lizzie was a lifelong friend and sister, not biologically, sister of mine who had passed away nearly 2 years prior of a sudden aggressive cancer. And so that little dog became Lizzie, and it's just suited her ever since. And I was able to let her parents know because she was an only child. Well, I've named my little puppy after Liz. So that's how we came up with her name. What I do want to ask you, you said it's really good just to, speak words of love to your dog or pet,
Any animal.
any
Yep.
animal. And I certainly do that. But what if I speak words of boredom? For instance, I tell my dogs everything that I'm going to do. I'm just going to go upstairs now and change the washing over. I'm just going to go and have a shower. All right, just going to get another coffee now. Come outside. Would you like to water the garden? And so those sorts of conversations would I would think almost put them to sleep. Do they like
No,
conversation? Because I'm on my
they
own.
love it.
Do they?
They love it. They love knowing what we're doing. And I've actually had one of my cats telling me, I just want to be involved. So keep doing it. They love knowing what you're doing, and they
Oh,
don't care if you're folding the laundry or you're doing the washing
yes.
up. The
Yeah.
fact that you've told them and you're including them in your life, because you are their world and
Yeah.
they want to know what's going on. And you've raised a really good point, so thank you for the reminder that
Yeah.
if people have animals that have separation anxiety,
Yeah.
it's really important to tell them where you're going and what you're
Yes.
doing and when you'll be
Yes.
back.
Yes.
So if an animal's had abandonment issues before they came to you, they will be worrying that you might go out and you might never come home again. And
Right.
so if you can say, I'm going to the shops, I'm going to get dog food and treats, I'll be back in an hour. They
Yes.
know where you're going, they know
Yes.
what you're doing, and you've told them that you're coming back. And that can really reduce their stress.
It's funny because every time I go out, I say the same thing. Even if I'm not going to the shops, it'll be, and I'm one of these people. It's mummy's going to the shops. I'll be back soon. And they know shops and they know back
Yep.
soon. And I say it
Yep.
in the same sing-song voice. So the others will go and do their thing. Lizzie will go to the back door and she'll just plonk herself down. But it's quite a chill experience. So I totally agree with you on that one. Another thing I want to ask you is my dog secretly judging me for my 5 o'clock glass of wine because she just stares at me from the top of the stairs. And I think, for God's sake, woman, can I please just have my glass of wine?
Now, is that Lizzie
Yes.
that's doing that?
Yes.
Do you think your friend Soul is in her?
Oh, don't. Oh, no, because that means I haven't known this for the last 10 years and I should have. And now she's
No.
only got a few years left. She could be.
That's what I'm getting. I just went buzzy when you said the name Lizzie to start off with, and I've just been waiting for a chance to ask you. Now I'm going buzzy all down my legs. So sometimes they're
No.
looking at us or vocalising with us differently because they're trying to tell us who they are and we don't know.
And
So I
she's
just
so
wondered,
protective.
did you enjoy having a glass of wine with her?
Yes, we would. We were what, 6 years apart maybe. But she was, as I said, part of our family, and we would go away on vacation together, the two families, and we did a lot. So we were kind of, yes, definitely it would be something that we would do together. She's really really present all the time, follows me anywhere I'm in the house. And when she comes in from outside from doing her business, she'll look for me, and she's just forever there. And it's funny because when I was driving her home, it was about an hour and a half, and I picked her up and I put her in. I had like a washing basket with towels in, and she was sitting in the front seat with me. And I always remember this. It was like a really profound drive. She threw up twice from anxiety, but I just had my hand on her the whole way home, as much as I could, driving a manual. And I was doing Reiki on her for the whole way home. And I kept saying, I will protect you. I will be with you always. I am here for you. Sorry. You're coming home with me. We'll just be a team. And it was just, and it's funny because I can feel the Reiki energy in my left hand now as I'm picturing putting my hand on Lizzie. So it was, that was a really sort of profound experience just between us both. But from that day on, it's like whatever that was ignited something. And it's kind of, I was just going to say, we're like soul sisters. So,
Yep.
and Liz was like a sister she pretty much was a sister to me. We had 8 kids in our family. She was an only child. Our parents were best friends. And yeah, Lizzie is like, I can't imagine the grief when she goes, but also I can't imagine ever being disconnected energetically from her, because she's just such a part of my heart and soul.
Yep. And I've discovered that when we have very close connections with our animals, that it's because we've had these past life soul connections with them. Like, people will have had a number of animals, but they'll call one their heart dog or their soul dog or their
Yeah.
soul cat, and they can't explain why that particular animal is so precious to them, but
Yes.
they're well aware that it's a very different bond to the bond they've had with their other animals. And so that's what I find when we have the conversation, that yes, it may have been a child from a past life that,
Yeah.
passed away early and wanted to come back and have another lifetime with their parent again. There's all sorts of reasons that they come back. But I, just get very buzzy about Lizzie. But
Goodness.
that's the other thing, that once they pass away, they can come back and visit us on an energetic level.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had so many people tell me they've seen their animal running up and down the corridor. And to me, that's really bizarre, because they no longer have a physical body. They're a
Yeah.
soul in
Yeah.
spirit. And they haven't explained to me how they do it. But somehow they put on a temporary physical body so that we can recognise them when they come back for a visit, or we can hear them. So my girl who passed, when she visited before she reincarnated, she would meow and I would hear her, so I'd know that she was in the house. The boys would know, they'd just be sitting looking at her, because the animals can sense other energetic presences, so they would know when she was in the house. I've had people with their animals in spirit jumping on their bed, and walking up and snuggling down next to them, or even coming up and patting them on the face. One of my friend's dogs passed away, and I looked at his photo when she did a post on Facebook, and he said, "Tell Mum I'm going to come back tonight." Now, that was on the day that he passed. He was a very evolved soul, and he knew that he could come back that night. And when I saw her online a few days later, I said, "Oh, what happened?" She just laughed, and she said he jumped on the bed with such force he knocked 2 pillows off. And because he'd only passed that day, she'd forgotten, and she just put her hand out automatically to pat him, and he wasn't there.
Oh,
So
wow.
I've got one lady whose dog comes back through her doggy door, nearly scares it to death, because the dog door goes bang, 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 bang.
Oh,
She can't see
yes, that
anything.
would freak me out.
And another lady whose cat, before she reincarnated, would get up in behind the blinds in the bedroom and wobble the blinds. And apparently she did that when she was living. So that was her way of telling Mum that she was there with her. So they try and let us know when they come back, or they can come back to us in a meditation or a dream. And you can actually physically hold them. You can hear them, barking or breathing or purring. And mine have done that a lot in meditations and dreams, and it's real. So you're really holding them again, because that's what lots of people tell me to tell their animal. Do you know how much I'd give just to hug you one more time?
Yes,
And
yes,
that's something that they let us experience when they come back like that. So they feel the grief too. I mean, they're separated from us. Yes, they're
yeah.
in heaven and they can reconnect with other animal family members and human members who are there, but they're not with us. And that's why they come back energetically. They're in the spiritual plane, we're in the physical plane, but they can be strong enough to do something to let us know that they're there. So they might move some of their toys. I've had one dog who told his mum that he was going to come back and sit on his cushion at the end of the bed, and she could see an indent in the cushion
Oh, wow.
where he'd been lying. So they do try and comfort us. If it's not their destiny to come back to us in this lifetime, they can help orchestrate for another animal to come to us. Because that's another question I get asked a lot, like, is it too soon to get another animal? And my answer is no, because sometimes it is our animals in spirit that are helping bring another animal to us, because they know that that will help heal our heart. And they know we're not being disrespectful to their memory. They know we're not replacing them with another animal, but they know we have the capacity in our heart to love another animal. And it's just beautiful if they come back, or if they help another animal have the opportunity to receive the love that they received. So either way, they're just beautiful experiences.
I just want to thank you so much for jumping on board today. This has been a really moving conversation. We've only been going for just over 35 minutes, and I have received so much from you, and your words and information are so comforting. Can you, before we finish, please just mention the course that you're doing and how we can link with you? I do have all your social links and website links, which I'll be putting on the podcast episode description. But just briefly tell us about this course and where we can have a look at it.
Okay, so if listeners are interested, the best thing to do would be to email me, and my email is chintuitive@bigpond.com.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually got a PDF about the program which explains it in more detail, and then I'm happy to have a Zoom chat with people and just find out, what their questions are. I've got a series of 11 foundational videos on my website that they'll get access to once they sign up. They're not very long, but it's to help activate your telepathic communication channel. And I also get you to read my book, The Bridge to Animal Consciousness.
Oh, wow.
And that's part of the program as well, because that helps activate your communication. I've had people read the book and suddenly can hear their animals' voices in their head.
Oh, my goodness.
So it's quite
Oh, my
potent.
goodness.
So I get people to do those things first, and once they've watched the videos and read the book, then we have 3 months of one-to-one Zoom meetings like this, with your animals. They don't have to be there with you, but we actually practice all the exercises live with me
Yes.
there, and I've prepared them the day before, so they know that they're going to be sending a word starting with the letter S or whatever it is, and then they've got time to think about what they want to do.
Yeah.
Some of them are very competitive, and so instead of sending us one word starting with S, they'll send 2 words starting with S, just to show the extent of their vocabulary, and also
Right.
that they really understand the question.
Can
And we do that.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're right.
I was just going to say, I've got that little one outside the door. I'll just go and grab her so you can see her face, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
If that's all right. Won't be a minute.
Yeah.
And I'll just edit out that gap.
That's all right.
So
is this Lizzie?
Yeah, this is Lizzie. Say hello. Yeah, and she's just been a great big protector. There we go.
And some of them do come with a role in addition to doing the soul mission and the soul lessons.
Yeah.
Some of them are here as guardians.
Yes.
And they want to protect us. And so that's why they can get quite stressed if we go out, because they can feel as though they're failing because they're not with us.
Yeah.
And that's why, again, it's so important to let them know where you're going, what you're doing. Some of them are here to teach us. So when we can communicate with them, then they can teach us what they're here to teach us. And some of them are here as healers. And so I'm very lucky my cats are healers and teachers. So they help me with the work that I'm doing, because I also send distance healing to support people. I make up crystal grids to support the people doing my program, just to help enhance the telepathic communication.
Well, thank you.
I get that Lizzie is in Lizzie.
Yeah. That's just made my decade. You have no idea. I want to thank you again so much. And to everyone listening, I'm sure you've gotten so much out of this. And I really urge you to get in contact with Annie, because the work you are doing is amazing. And I can't wait to go back onto your website and look at all your resources and the workshop and everything, and check out your books as well.
My program's too new to be on the website at the moment, so that's
Okay.
why I'm asking people to contact me. I'm also writing my third book at the moment, which is the sequel to The Bridge to Animal Consciousness,
Okay.
and I'm taking pre-orders for people in Australia at the moment. It will get published this year, but
Yeah.
it's all about my experiences with soul reincarnation and
Perfect.
soul visits from our animals to help grieving parents know that there is hope and happiness after heartbreak,
Oh
because
God.
they can reincarnate.
Yeah,
So,
you're providing such a great service, because, as I always think, dogs, at the very least, and every other animal out there, they pretty much make the best humans. So they're just the best people on the planet. Thank
yep.
you, Annie. I really appreciate it. And to all our listeners, thanks so much for joining us today. And we'll see you next time on Fly Mum Fly.
From empty nest to personal best, let's fly.